Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the AAA podcast. Today, I am thrilled to welcome special guest Terry Phillips. Terry is a very experienced physical therapist and the owner of his own practice, PHILLIPS Rehab and Performance, which currently operates out of Baseball by Pros, a baseball and softball facility in Linwood, Washington. Welcome to the show, Terry.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate you guys having me on. Anthony, personally, is pretty cool since I've known you since you were junior high school, and now it's like see you go through the ranks, and now we're more like a peer colleague level here, so it's pretty awesome to see. Rowan, you're cool too, man. From the 5 minutes I've known
you. Sure, it's felt like I've known you longer because I worked with Dylan, and I've known a bunch of athletes that have worked with you. But it's finally nice to get this face to face here.
Awesome.
Okay, well, our first question, we kind of like to start things a little bit lighthearted. Just been asking coaches about their experiences with caffeine, what their kind of how much gets them through the day, how much they're drinking and stuff, what their go-to means is. So give us the rundown.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Can I give you a little journey then?
For sure.
Okay. This is the evolution of my caffeine intake. So I never drank coffee. I just don't like the taste of coffee. My family growing up was all big pop because I'm from Western New York, or soda for most of the country. But I started getting Mountain Dew in high school. And then my first couple of years of working, I would just have I got to the point where I'd have Mountain Dew for work, first thing in the morning. And then I started working in Driveline, and then just it's I think the average intake is probably 600 milligrams a day at least. So then I started at some point when I would I think I was trying to throw myself as far as going through a form program on my own. I was like, okay, it's velo day. I'm gonna start drinking. I'm gonna try a Rockstar today, and then I did, and I was like, oh shit, this is pretty good. And then that transferred eventually into a daily morning Rockstar, and then I was and then I had never really gotten into the heavier stuff for a little bit. I was, Spike was it back in the day, but I go much on the Spike, and then after a while, then I was pretty consistent with the one Rockstar a day or whatever, some other variables, and then my daughter was born, and I think as Anthony knows, I switched jobs to go back to outpatient for a little bit, but then the first year or so that my daughter was in daycare, she just was sick all the time, so her sleep was just absolutely awful. So then I got into the habit of having 2 energy drinks a day. And I was probably going 500-600 milligrams a day, and I was just it was just getting me survive. Now that she's back to normal, and I've been just trying to dial back, I'm back to just one. I like the Rockstar Zeros the most. Really, just I'm drinking it right now, the tangerine, mango, guava, strawberry, which is a super high tea drink. But I usually go with that. If I'm gonna lift, I'm gonna go with a Rain, the white gummy bear. And then Bodie and I keep on going back and forth of if C4 is actually good or not. I don't think it's actually good, but it gives you the best feeling. So again, if I really if I'm going to go at a deadlift workout, I'll probably go with a C4 at place of something else. But I'm trying to keep it now one a day with those, and a couple are smaller caffeine intakes are kind of green tea level. So I'm probably 200 to 350 intake a day, which I think is reasonable. I think I'm seeing more information out there now that people who drink more caffeine are actually smarter, live longer, generally better looking or something like that. So I'm not too worried about getting dialed back now. I was oh, I need to get down to an 1 to 2 energy drinks a week, but I think now I'm in a good spot with it.
Love that answer. The whole reason why I wanted this question to be asked was because I drink so much caffeine, and I don't want to feel bad about it. Because the last guy we had on was I don't drink caffeine at all, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to stop it.
Has Dylan been on the show?
Not yet, but yet. We'll have him on eventually.
So this will be a good. So the first day that Dylan Newcomer, the Driveline PT now, was my intern originally. And the first day he comes in, he was actually there before me. and like he sits down and he's drinking a C4, like just straight up C4, no like flavored or anything, which is like psycho behavior. And then he had like two more on his desk, like on the desk, and I was just like, oh, I just go, who are those for? He goes, oh, those are for me. I was just like, what? He's just like, he goes, yeah. I go, how many of those per day do you drink? He goes, oh, I drink like 6. I was just like, what the hell? I was just like, I go, what's your resting heart rate? He's like, oh, it's like 60. I was like, all right, man, cool. I guess you're made to work here.
I didn't know it was 6. I knew it was a lot because like you would never see Dylan without a C4 in his hand.
Yeah, just a hoodie and a C4. Like, it'd be like 90 degrees. He's wearing a hoodie, drinking a C, which is probably like correlated that he has like 1,200 grams of milligrams of like caffeine, and like he's cold in 90-degree temperatures. But I don't know if that's still the case. But like back in 2022 when he was starting, that's how much caffeine he was taking.
I think when I recently saw him, he said he was trying to cut it down a little bit. But by the end of summer, when were we there, Anthony? Was that summer of 22 or is 23? Whichever summer that was, by the end, he had gotten them to put C4 into the vending machine so he could just
that's awesome.
Reload throughout the day. And then that also correlated with him just wanting to play basketball constantly throughout the day. So I think he'd drink a C4, start buzzing, and want to go run around a little bit because we'd just go shoot hoops for like 2 hours.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You want to ask the first question, Ron?
Sure. Okay, well, we can go into a little bit more deep dive. So you were a college baseball player for
we'll
at least a couple years.
Yeah.
You had 2 labrum surgeries, if I'm correct, throughout your baseball career. Kind of looking back on your career and those labrum surgeries, how do you think the knowledge that you have now would have helped you return better or prevent those injuries? Like just comparing what you would have done now versus what you did back then.
Oh man, like I actually looked at the calendar, see what year it was, see like do some math like when I graduated from high school and college. So I had my first labrum surgery in 2002. So like take this information with a lot of grain of salt.
That's when I was born.
Yeah. So like I mean like by no means do I think like my PT was like quote unquote bad or anything. It's just like it was just the times. But there's just so many levels of like, and again, this is like we could turn this into like a rant in itself. There's just so many levels of like poor quality of care that have been just like totally ingrained in rehab for the last, still ongoing, like even prior to my surgeries in the early 2000s, and then and probably even currently. As far as just like at the time, there's just like no like pitch counts were a thing, but like it was still very much, and I still argue like this is pretty rampant, like that more throwing was a bad thing, and then like trying to like just layer your throwing days as far as like high and low days was definitely not even remotely a thing. Like we did lift, but it was just like it was more like just bodybuilding style lifting, which is like that's a lot of my athletes currently still. So like I didn't deadlift or actually like really squat. I did the part, the bro partial dip, knee dip thing. I didn't do it, but I didn't do like actual like good squats or deadlifts until I was, my last year of PT school. And then there was nothing that was like quote unquote arm care, and definitely no like, layering of like the different physical qualities into your arm care or even like your training. So there's just like so many layers that like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I definitely wouldn't have gotten hurt or I would have come back significantly better. But there's just so many things like if I had me now, when I was whatever, 18 to 20 years old, it's just like, it would have gone way, way different than what I was doing, where like it was your traditional, like, again, which is still, unfortunately, that's still pretty rampant of like, oh, you're going to do your sideline external rotations and your band work and your band pull aparts. Interestingly enough, the low trap work was like scapular depressions, which is basically like I basically had like two like push up handles, and I had them like on a treatment table. I had to like push myself up and then just hold it there, so my scaps would like depress. And I had to hold it for like a minute, like 5 sets of 1 minute, which actually it was pretty brutal. But that was like that, and then like Superman's and just like holding like a Y for like a minute. That was like my low trap work. So it was just yeah. There's just so many levels, but this has just been like PT as a whole for baseball in the last like 30 years, which I think is like I don't think it's enough credit for why pitchers are still getting hurt at the rate that they're getting. If you ask like the medical community, it's a lot of like, oh, they're doing this, this, and this. That's all bad and new because we just don't understand it, and they're throwing harder than ever. It's like, well, also like for the last 30 years, you guys have been treating pitchers like they're porcelain, and you've been trying to like not add stress to them. And then you have on one end like really really high level athletes who like have huge engines, but on like the medical health prevention side, you're telling them like don't stress your body that much, and like that's just two conflicting pieces that is I think is like in my personal belief is like put a stunt on how healthy pitchers could potentially be, in today's game.
Why do you think that we've treated pitchers like glass, or just, I guess, even any type of overhead athlete like glass, like you said, the last 30 years?
I think I think it goes down to just like the belief, and again, this isn't honestly even like just the pitchers. This is like, I mean, if you ask a lot of the population, they're thinking like physical stress is bad and dangerous. Especially like that's a pretty rampant thing for in the medical community and even in PT is just like we want to not overstress the system, the tissue, whatever. And I think that's like gets really, really highlighted in overhead athletes. Just like, okay, well, most common is like don't bench press. Sometimes it's still even like. So actually, I got to my current facility, Baseball Pros. One of the owners was like he had never heard of like pitcher. Like he played professionally, like up to like AAA. And I'm not saying like not ragging on him here, but like this is just his experience. Is like he played professionally, like him, like pitchers like overhead lifting was just not a thing. And I was just like, no, we need to like make your shoulders strong. We like got to do this. And he was just like taken aback that like I would suggest that. And like he's been exposed to like professional trainers and like doctors and PTs at like all levels. But yeah, I just think it's just like we have this as like such a, I don't want to say fear, but we're really adverse to like applying stress to the body, and trying to make an adaptation from that. And then we think our way to limit injuries is just like avoid the thing. On multiple levels, not even just like physical, but I think that just gets highlighted the most with throwers. Is like, okay, you're already putting your arm through a lot of stress. The old adage is like you only have so many guns, only so many bullets left in the gun. You gotta save them, and that comes from like they highlight that both in like a throwing program, but also in just like how they're lifting. So then you get you get your 5 sets of 1 minute of Supermans. You get your band pull aparts. You just get like your quote unquote, just all your band work. That's just like super low stress, and then like super low ceiling on the adaptations you can make.
Yeah, I've been really surprised. Even just recently this summer, I was, exposed to a setting where a baseball trainer wasn't having their athletes overhead press at all, just because they're still under that adage of it's just bad for the arm, the elbow, and the shoulder. And that's just it's so crazy to me, and it's crazy because I've come from such settings where that's so far out and removed. But it is such a rampant part of the world still.
Yeah, and like it's cool. It's cool, like seeing like you guys around younger PTs. Like it's definitely more of a mindset now. I think in the younger group, that's like, yeah, like we get it. Like lifting is cool. Again, not just even for like baseball, but just in general. It's like so you see. I think the tide is changing, and I do think there probably is like a swinging the pendulum too far in the other direction, as far as like no, that actually is a dumb exercise to do. I don't know like what that point is yet. I think we might get there, but maybe we don't. But like again, like throwing is so stressful that I just don't think we've gotten to that. I don't say we haven't gotten to that point, but I just think like I like that like seeing again in the younger population of like, no, we recognize that like stress is a thing that needs to be like appropriately applied to the body for like those like responses to happen and like again build that like resiliency.
That's something I've been seeing too, even just like, I know this is a bad example, but just even on social media, like even just following more PTs that I agree with. And
Yeah,
it's hard because I'm a very young strength coach and I don't have the credentials or even close to a physical therapist. So I, I feel weird critiquing in a way,
yeah,
but like also I feel like some of it's common sense.
yeah.
But one of the things I was going to ask that you mentioned earlier was, why do pitch counts not work for uh, for assessing or managing stress on the arm?
Uh, that's it's a fairly multifactorial answer. Well, I would say they quote unquote don't work because it's just such a small piece of the puzzle, and it's just like why nothing individually works. It's like, well, I mean, I'll use a good example. I think like the Flex Pro is like an awesome tool. Sorry, I'm like changing this, changing here. I think the Flex Pro is an awesome tool and it's getting really highlighted about doing some awesome things. But when we're gonna look at it, like my personal belief is like as good as it is, and I think you working the finger flexors as good as is awesome. But I think in a couple of years we're gonna look at it like, oh, it quote unquote doesn't work. It's like no, because nothing fucking works. Like, and in a vacuum of like this one thing, and I think like of like this one thing being the answer, and I think that's part of the issue, just as a industry, is that like, we're just trying to find like this one thing that's like the answer to like this multi-level problem. As I was highlighting my own issues, and I think pitch counts is like a perfect example of this. Of like, I think pitch counts are still good, especially like when you implement them in the right way. Of like, uh, oh yeah, you were at your previous high was like 40 throws in a game. We gotta make sure we don't go to like 70 throws now. I think they're like at the basis of like what they are, like they're good and they're useful. I just think like one half the population doesn't even follow them. I think there's been studies that have shown like that for like the pitch count guidelines, both like from a purposeful standpoint and also just like by like, oh, we just don't know what the pitch counts are. Uh, but then two is just like it doesn't take into account like the rest of the throwing like throughout the week, and I think that's one of the biggest ones. It's like, okay, yeah, you have a kid. It's like I'm going to use two extreme examples. Like you have a kid who's one of the best players of the team, so he's also playing shortstop. He's throwing 5-6 days a week, and then every day is like a high intensity throwing session. And it's like, yeah, like the 50 throws he threw in that game and he got injured is not like the issue there. It's just like he's just doing too much rest of the week. Versus if you have a kid on the other end of the spectrum who's like he's a PO only, he throws again his 50 pitches, but like he also is only throwing 2-3 days a week, and then like not much doing much else. It's like if he gets hurt, it's not because like the pitch counts didn't work, just because like the rest of the week for him, the rest of his like season or whatever, is just like he's just undertraining himself. So I think like from a like pitch count perspective, it's just such a small piece of the puzzle, and then it's like I get worried that people are gonna like neglect that now because like, oh, we've had pitch counts such a long period of time and they haven't been working. It's like, no, it's just because you're like we had a period of time where you put it like on a pedestal, like expecting to solve everything. But again, just like everything else, it's just like so many levels that need to be addressed, and like we should still have that and still like practice common sense with like progressing and throwing an athlete, especially like in the course of the season. But we got to take care of X, Y, Z, which is like it's difficult, hard work, and it's like goes on a case by case basis.
Kind of continuing along this pitch count and like workload talk. You've been pretty vocal on social media about like youth sports, especially in the baseball world, and how we
Yeah.
kind of treat the kids. I know this is probably going to send you on a little bit of a rant here, but you just want to talk kind of about your opinions and then kind of what you see as kids coming in and having elbow and shoulder issues from such a young age.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. We got an hour, you said? Okay. Okay. So I can answer this like a lot of ways, but probably like I'll reference more what I've been posting about most recently is just like the concept that like non-specialization is like the holy grail of like youth sports injury prevention. And I get there's like definitely a lot of studies out there that like show that when you specialize, you're more likely to get hurt. I would just make a baseline argument of like, yeah, if you play more of a sport, you're more likely to get injured doing that sport. But just what I see too much is like in a vacuum. Again, yes, playing multiple sports is great. You get a lot of exposure to like different like physical problems that need to be solved that you just don't get playing one sport, regardless of what the sport is. In an ideal world, like yeah, every kid would play like 2, 3, 4 sports within the course of a year. But every sport has the same issues that baseball does. Is like they all think that like every sport wants to set their kids up for the best level of success, and they think that level of success is just like more time playing that sport, which like has its validity. But instead of having basketball season, baseball season, football season, they're just like it's all one season. So the majority of the kids that I get now, it's like a lot of them just get hurt when like they're just doubling up on their sports. I'm looking at like kind of like the middle school, early high school level where they haven't specialized yet. I have a 12-year-old kid right now. And it's like he's a good athlete, so he's going to have like higher outputs. He's going to throw harder. He's going to put more stress on his body, but he just doesn't have like the necessarily the tissue capacity yet to tolerate that. Even just like folks within his sport. But he's also like plays basketball. And he plays like on a higher level basketball team. So it's like he has his tournaments on the weekend for for most weekends for baseball. But then he also has like 2 to 3 basketball practices a week. He had a tournament in Vegas for basketball, which like he's 12. It's what are we doing having 12-year-olds go down to Vegas for basketball tournaments? And I'm not like this isn't like ragging on the dad or anything. This is just like our society. But it's like there's just like there's so many games being played, so many practices being played, and like if we're somewhat identifying like a high-low stim whatever schedule as like a good thing that we should follow as far as like have your like high workload days, your low workload days, and just kind of alternate that. If you're mapping out over the course of the week, like you can follow that within like a scope of baseball, but then you throw in basketball on those other days, and it's like either those high days become like exceedingly high, or like those low days become exceedingly relatively high because they're like filling in with another sport. They're doing that over the course of like 6-7 days, and they just get like again they're just theoretical gas tank just gets absolutely drained. And then when you're in like that chronic overworked state, you can follow like your pitch counts, you can follow like your appropriate throwing workloads the best you can, but your like capacity in that moment is just gonna be like so diminished. And it's just gonna be a matter of time before injuries happen. So I just think like the discussion on on youth sports and playing multiple sports needs to just have a lot more nuance. And I think like parents and coaches need to have more awareness. And like I unfortunately don't have like what a good answer is, but I think I posted about this not too long ago of I think just like you need to have a discussion with like the coaches and like recognize that each season is the season for like one sport, like yes, you can still do some basketball work during baseball season, but like baseball is your main thing. During baseball season, you can still do maybe some football work and how much like baseball you're playing, but like you can't go hammer out your 4-day week like football lifts while you're also in like baseball season. And I think like again, I tell it this, I get not want to be like the dog teammate who's just like, oh, I can't do the workouts, coach, and look like you're a bad teammate. Because I think that there's fears that might stay up poorly in the eyes of the coach. But this is like honestly, there's just like I think the best case scenario like that I can think of right now is just like have the discussions with your coach and be like, hey, coach, I need to focus on baseball for my own health and performance. I'm still working out. I'm still doing the right things. I'm still developing, but like I got to make sure that like I can stay on the field and still make improvements. And if like, ideally the coach accepts that, again, that's a nice utopian society thing that coaches will just be like, oh yeah, good, good. When in reality, that's often not the case. But, again, going back to like this 112-year-old, I just told him, I was like, you got some like uncomfortable decisions coming up, man. Like you can't be running the schedule that you're wanting to run as far as like going down to Vegas in the summer while you're also trying to play like 60, 70, 80 baseball games a year. I'm not telling you have to pick a sport now, but like you like from a physiological perspective, I'm not making the rules here. I'm just like giving you like what your body is governing. You need to like eventually probably make some decisions of like, okay, do I want to keep on trying to push like the gas on both sports like I am, or am I going to bias one more towards the other and recognize that that may set you up in a way where you just might not be able to progress your career, quote unquote, as much as you can.
Well, off that, I was going to ask, in those situations, other than the scenario you just mentioned, what do you do in those situations? Because they come to you for physical therapy, but like if they're already so stressed, it's like how much stress can you add to them that they can recover from? Like, how do you go about those situations?
Yeah, that's a tough balance. It definitely goes like individual basis. Um, and I think a lot of times like I'll just give like very minimal stuff, and then like we'll spend a lot of the session like talking about, again, workload management as like is a hot a topic as it may be. That's where we spend like that's just where we put a lot of resources and like, okay, you got to like shift things around within your schedule a bit more, so it's just like you're just getting your body a little bit more time to recover. But in a lot of those instances, like I'll still give guys like 2 to 3 things, but like if it's someone where like they're overstressed, it might just be more like mobility work, like maybe more isos, something that's a little bit more recoverable, as opposed to like, okay, now we're going to add in like more arm care work for you. It's like adding an arm, like we'll use an example of like an athlete who's just like arm is just taxed. Like more arm care is not going to be the answer in this scenario. It's just going to be like take stuff off your plate so that you can actually recover from what you're doing. And then maybe at that point, we'll maybe like shift your exercises around to, to maybe like to something I feel is like going to be benefit you better. But like I could give you the best exercise in the world. If your body's already in the tank right now, it's not going to do you any good. So again, it goes case by case basis. There's definitely still a lot of times where it's just like, yeah, you just need to get your arm stronger, your arm, whatever, your body, your legs, whatever. You got your whole, you stronger. And I'll definitely add more in for those athletes. But a lot of times, just like you got too much going on, so we got to like again look at your schedule, see how we can manage that better. Give you just like a low stimulus maybe for like some things, if even that. But then to really like hammer on things like help set you best up for like recovering and like again getting your theoretical gas tank filled back up.
What's your opinions on like an athlete who maybe isn't playing a bunch of sports at the same time, but they are a multi-sport athlete, and so they're almost always in season, and so they're not like allocating a lot of time to a training program, or what they can allocate is like a lower amount. Do you see a lot of issues with that as well, where kids aren't taking like a true off-season period where they can like progress a lot in the weight room and get a lot stronger?
I I think theoretically, yes, from a health perspective, that will probably end up hurting them. I can't definitively be like, oh yeah, I see that all the time, but I think like just like from a principles perspective, that makes sense. I do think it ends up hurting them more on the performance side. I've had talks with athletes about this too, of just like you if you're you can't just be like in season lifting all the time, all the time, and expect that that's going to like get you to where you need to be from a physical development perspective. Like this is, and I mean, we're also assuming that kids also just like are in season lifting and not just still trying to run like a 4 or 5 day or 6 day split of lifting while they're in season for multi sports. That's more often what I see. But yeah, I think like long term, you gotta get ahead of the curve on that, of like explain like you need a dedicated off season. And I tell a lot of parents like this is why I'm like a fan of like baseball players playing football, just really from a perspective like you get time to like lift like a football player and like get yourself like bigger, stronger, faster, whatever, that you typically don't get in like the most common baseball training scenarios that are out there. I'm not, obviously like if you're doing it appropriately, like that will still happen. But with like a football training program that's already baked in. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here for a second. I gave too many tangents. But yeah, I think like long term that's going to, I think that'll start like biting them in the butt like when they start to be like sophomore, junior, senior in high school, more from a performance perspective. But like I also think like again from a health perspective too, theoretically, if they are just not building up that that quote unquote armor to handle their stress, like they'll still like start throwing harder, but eventually once the amount of stress you can output exceeds like how much your body can tolerate, once you get a large enough gap between that's when your injury is going to happen. I think if you're just not spending enough appropriate dedicated time in the weight room, that gap is going to start probably increasing at some point, probably again later in your high school career, and I think that's when you're going to run into some issues. But I would still probably say it's more like on the performance side, and like you're not going to be setting yourself up for taking your career to the next level if that's what you want or hoping to.
We're talking more about like workload management. Me and Ron and I were both like recently college athletes, and one of the things I saw a lot was people would put like cupping, red light therapy, stim, massage guns on a pedestal when it came to recovery methods.
Yeah.
While they were not eating, like not getting any sleep and not hydrating enough. Why are those modalities not always the answer to, I guess, just rehabbing from an injury or making something feel better?
So, I'm going to speak in pretty big generalizations here. All of those things that you highlighted and other things generally operate under like the idea that like essentially like, it's just an input to your body, and essentially like pain operates as we're not going to get into pain science here, but pain operates as like all these inputs that you have, your your tissue stress, your training, your games, your life stress, the environment, what you're eating, whatever. Your body takes in all these inputs, kind of figures out what's going on, and then gives an output of pain. Those modalities that you talked about, massage, cupping, whatever, are another input, but they come with essentially a preconceived notion that like it's going to be beneficial. And this is like the secret to like all of like rehabilitation, whether it's like PT, massage, chiropractics, whatever, of like if you just go in thinking you're going to get better, you're going to get better. Like that's the big secret. So end of the podcast here, guys. But those things like just operate with that. Like you go in, you're like, oh, I'm hurting. I'm going to get this thing that is beneficial for me. It gives your body the input of something happening. And because you have that preconceived notion that it's going to be beneficial, the output will end up being reduced pain. It's, especially when you're looking at like the evidences across the board, it's not significantly changing things from a physiological perspective to make a meaningful impact like on your actual like recovery. Not as much, at least, as like good nutrition, good sleep, good hydration, stress management, workload management, as that would be. But those things are like both easy, because you just have to generally like lay there, and B, they like kind of come across it's for various reasons they give the perception that they're like, it's like, oh, I'm working hard because I'm doing the work because I'm like going to go get cupped. Like I'm like Michael Phelps. Like I'm a high level athlete. I just beat myself on the ground and then I'm going to get cupped. So I'm like, so it's like, there's this level of like ego built in with it that like, you're actually like putting like hard work in. But I mean, my personal belief, and I tell this all the time, the hard work is the boring stuff, like the rest, the going to bed like early, that's the work. And like all that other stuff, I think just like goes as a band-aid. Now, with that said, do I think there's no benefit to it? Like, no, I think there definitely can be benefit to it, but it's it's essentially the cherry on top, not the sundae. Where I think people just want to don't want to go through the other aspects of it because that's harder. So they just want to think they can just band-aid over things with whatever modality. And then for a while that will work until it doesn't.
I'll get the next one.
Oh, sure. Changing a little bit off of that here. Obviously you're a PD with some more like coaching, strength and conditioning background as well. How important do you think it is for people in a rehabilitation setting to have experiences in more of that performance setting, and then also vice versa? So people who are in more of the sports performance, strength and conditioning world, do you think it's super beneficial for them to have some sort of experience in a rehabilitation setting as well?
Yeah, I mean, mainly I think there's some blurry lines, as far and most commonly you'll see PTs complain oh, he's a strength conditioning coach, he shouldn't be doing rehab, and I mean, I sure at some point there's a line there that shouldn't be crossed. I don't know what that is, but I also from my own perspective, I'm I always wonder from time to time oh, am I crossing the line into trying to do strength conditioning where it's I don't I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So there's definitely some lines there, but I think when you're looking at PT, strength conditioning, chiropractic, even massage, I think 95% of it, I'm throwing out just arbitrary numbers, should all be very, very similar. And PT specifically is just I think a lot of people say this, but I won't give it credit to anyone specifically. But the most common phrase right now is PT is essentially just training in the presence of an injury. So I think, especially if you're working with athletes, you need to have that understanding of what they're trying to do, of what they're trying to get to, and recognize that that's up here, and then what most PT is down here. And very often, PT will just take it from just say okay, you're here, you did well at this, you're not paying more, just now go to here. But you got to recognize that you got to ramp that, for numerous reasons, you got to ramp up to that point of gradually again, increasing workload, applying stress, just keep on hammering home with this talk. But so I think having the understanding of strength conditioning principles from a PT is super perspective. And then from the strength conditioning perspective, I just think you need to recognize, by no means do I think you gotta be rehab injuries, but you gotta recognize when things need to be worked around versus pushed through. And then also, need referring out in case there's something more serious and potential. And I think on both ends, again, both my end trying to strength coach and both from strength coaches trying PT or whatever, I think we would probably be in a pretty good, much better spot with a lot of things if we just recognize that our scope doesn't extend as far as we would like it to be. So meaning I think if you're a strength coach and you're working with an injury, yeah, try some things here and there, make some management here and there, but don't extend yourself out trying to solve in athletes injury issues. And on my end, again, reason why I would group myself more into the strength conditioning perspective is not because I feel I'm as good as you guys are or anyone at Driveline is at strength conditioning. It's just I just recognize that the level of training out there just sucks. For most athletes, definitely at even so many levels, level of training is just absolutely terrible. And I recognize I can do a better job than that, but I also recognize that there's a level of, if I'm getting to a high enough level of athlete, high level college or pro, that person needs a higher level of care than from a strength conditioning perspective than what I can provide. And that's when I should refer out. I think just recognizing those lanes, quote unquote, even though they're blurry lines, but recognizing it's okay, you're starting to extend yourself, me extending myself beyond what my capabilities are, will be what's beneficial for the athlete. And just recognize you need to put the athlete first as opposed to putting your own ego first.
Yeah, that's I've caught myself almost crossing that line. But I think it's also it's out of good intention, because I feel like a lot of us are in this profession because we've experienced something or we've gone through something. But yeah, I totally agree. And usually my text messages to Terry are because I have someone who's like, I've been to PT and it's never worked and no one can fix my problem. I'm like, all right, let me text the magician. I always called Terry the magician. I always told Rowan that because he fixed all my problems.
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, I appreciate that.
I think there's actually a Twitter post a while ago where I said that, when I was talking about my like Tommy John recovery, and then my Twitter got hacked and the post got deleted, so it's forever gone.
Yeah, they have. I deleted my Twitter account not too long ago for the better of my overall well being.
One of the things that one of the posts you've had recently, it was quote, heavy squats will improve a pitcher's balance better than any balance training. I was wondering if you could go into that and explain what made you want to post that.
So I mean, it depends on how deep you can get into the baseball rehab world. You might have seen this post. Essentially, like someone had sent me a post and it was just like it was like a PT working with like a pitcher, and like he's just throwing out words like essentially it was a kid that was rehab. It was like a teenager who was rehabbing from like TJ, um, and like they're doing like some balance stuff. They had they were like doing kind of the water ball, whatever. And like the PT is throwing out words like somatosensory to like this fucking 15-year-old kid that looked like he was gonna get blown over in like a strong windstorm. And it's just like this kid does not need balance training. Like this kid does not need to know what the hell his somatosensory system is or like whatever. The kid just needs to be like he just needs to eat and like put on a hypertrophy cluster protocol. Like that should be his rehab for the next 12 weeks. So like that's just like I try to be less reactive on social media than I have in the past. But that was one just like this is come on guys. But then that's what kind of led to that that specific post of just like I've told the story before, but like I'll use an anecdotal here, so like really high level of evidence. Actually, it was from when after doing hypertrophy cluster protocol, so it's a good leeway. But so basically, like a lot of times people look at the hip airplane as like this pinnacle of like balance and hip stability assessment, and like sure, okay, whatever. And they'll put a lot of eggs in the basket of like training it, and I have fallen into that category too of like, oh, I really got to work on my hip airplanes. I suck at these. So forever period of time I did, and like I got like marginally better, and then I took some time off, and then I ran hypertrophy cluster protocol myself, which I don't know if you guys are both familiar with. The program.
I just finished. Yeah, I just finished my second time through it.
Hell yeah. So I was joking. I have two PT buddies who've also ran it, and I was joking with them. My in-laws are taking us on a Disney cruise next year, so I joked I'm gonna run it like at least 2 or 3 more times before we go on the cruise. But it's awesome. It's like one of the greatest programs out of all time. But so basically, like I was running it for my first time, and then got bigger, got stronger, and then like shortly thereafter, I just went back and rechecked my like hip airplanes, and I got way better with my hip airplanes just from putting on muscle mass and getting stronger. Like lo and behold. But I mean, when we're looking at like what balance is, and I think I alluded to the post, is like you have like multiple, discussions on like, what the definition could be, but like we'll accept that like it's somewhere in the vicinity of balance being like the ability to resist force and keep yourself upright. I said resist force or perturbation, and I think we need to accept like a part of that equation is like you gotta be able to produce force and be able to produce it quickly to resist these forces that are happening to you quickly. And I think we get too, again, just don't miss the forest from the trees as far as like, oh, we gotta like work specifically on this skill, which argue that balance is a large skill component. But we missed the part of the equation at like the produce force thing. And a lot of athletes, this kid specifically in this example of the post I saw, just don't have like high force producing capabilities. And then obviously like be able to produce it fast too. So I think a lot of times, especially, and that's what I said with pitchers, because a lot of times they're just so undertrained. The biggest bang for your buck from a balance perspective is just going to be get bigger, get stronger, and then just work on that force production. And then from there, if you want to layer it on and then like do like some balance work, I think that's totally fine. But like, don't make it the main thing and like dome kids up or dome pitchers up about like this is like a low, that this is like a really big like hanging fruit that they need to address. When in reality, it's just like you just need to be a better athlete, dude.
We're at Driveline, some of our meetings with younger guys would just be like, your training program is drinking chocolate milk and eating steak. That's it.
Yeah.
I have a very like niche question. So Anthony, if you ever like a broader one, probably ask that first.
Go ahead.
So I was recently, when I was in Washington earlier this summer, I was talking to Dylan a little bit about I've had a very short career, but I've been seeing a lot of like not true TOS type symptoms, but like more like nerve entrapment stuff, which I kind of bucket in with TOS just for the ease of naming it. And I was talking to him about this like increased number that I've been seeing lately, and he kind of felt the same way, that he was seeing a lot of those, maybe not true TOS, but more along those lines, symptoms presenting in overhead throwing athletes. I was just wondering if you've kind of seen that throughout the last couple of years, and then maybe kind of how you've gone about trying to address it.
So as far as more, I don't know. I'm gonna play counter arguments to both you and Dylan. Of like, I think once you have, and this is not just with like TOS nerve stuff, and this is general across a lot of populations. But like, I think once you're kind of more aware of like an injury, you start seeing it more. That's true with a lot of things. Like, I have as soon as I got my last car, I started noticing a lot more of those cars on the road, type deal. I think like once you have like an awareness of like, oh, this is what this injury looks like, I'm going to now be more aware of it, and I'm going to see it more, because you're going to just tease it out a little better. And like, I know this is a knock on Dylan by means, because he's awesome, but like, I think just Dylan being like a younger PT, like probably is like part of the like learning curve. It was like, I'm going to start seeing this a little bit more, and then I'm going to have more awareness of this. So I personally don't think I've seen more of it, more than any other like rate of any other injury. I'm not saying that's not possible, but just like my own personal experience, and it just hasn't quite been there. But again, I think like all the other factors we talked about earlier, just like from injury rates as a whole being higher, with that you're going to get like higher levels of like nerve. I just say I was like, again, generally bucketed as like nervy type injuries. But I still see like a good amount of those. This is the one where I'll probably, it's kind of weird. It's like, I think we're like workload management, especially on the recovery side, is like super, super heavy. But then this is where I also like lean more into like the biomechanics aspect of it, where like this is where because I've just had like good success with it. And I'm not saying it's because it's, the biomechanics side of things, because we're also addressing like the workload management and recovery side, and trying to like down regulate like a nervous system. Because I think at the end of the day, when you're getting like these nervy related issues, there's just a hypersensitivity that's there that could be happening at like the peripheral level, down the arm or in the tissues itself. But also like there's probably like a central nervous system like amplification too, where again, just things are just heightened. And like stress, decreased recovery is definitely going to play a role. So like that's always being addressed. So I can't just say it's like one or the other that's being successful. But like as far as addressing from biomechanics perspective, this is where I'll kind of get into your Bill Hartman, Zach Couples, rib cage type stuff, which I I had a period of time, maybe Anthony was around during this time, where I was like really in that stuff. This was actually fresh off like COVID, when I had a lot of time myself to get into some weeds. So like a lot of people were doing like drunken turtles and like, on elbows headstands and breathing. It was weird times. But I'll still like kind of utilize like similar principles of like, if we're gonna talk specifically about like TOS and like, thoracic outlet mainly just kind of goes through like neck into like just below like the first rib. So I think if we're looking at trying to improve those areas, like one is like just improve like the ability of like the thorax and rib cage to move, get the neck moving better. So that's where I'll dig into a lot, as far as like I'll personally use like the expansion compression model of, again, rib cage being able to expand, rib cage compressing / over compressing. And I'll just generally see like where athletes are most limited on that. Typically I'll use kind of like passive neck range motion test and passive shoulder range motion test as like a proxy for how those areas are moving. And then whatever seems like it's most tight, most restricted, is what I'll typically address. And then oftentimes that corresponds with like symptoms reducing, whether it's like from, again, down regulation of the nervous system, whether it's like reducing some type of like compression area, whether it's just like freeing areas up, whether it's also could just be like I'm giving them that input that things are going to work, and then they feel magically better from that. But that's more how I'll attack it. So I just think, again, if we're dealing with those types of symptoms, like in the workload management is going to be a huge aspect of it. But then also, like, again, get rib cage, T-spine. If you want to go down the pelvis, sure. And then like get neck all moving better. And in my experience, that generally corresponds pretty well with like, again, nervy related issues improving.
So obviously the goal for athletes is to not get in the situation where they have injuries or things like this happen. Would you say that, I guess my question is, and maybe you already covered it, is what are like the top 3 things pitchers can do to, I guess, reduce the likelihood of one of these injuries of occurring? I didn't want to say prevent.
Yeah. No, I got you. I mean, it depends on how deep into like each category you want to go. But number one would just be your workload management, and that's a very, very vague term as far as like where you're missing, where a specific athlete's missing a boat. Is it you're throwing, too hard too frequently? Is it you're not throwing hard enough? Is it you're not getting enough high intensity days? You're not throwing frequently enough? Are you lining up your lifting with your throwing appropriately? Are you doing, what type of like lifting split are you doing? Are you doing too much during the season? I think that's I would say if like that'd be like the number one thing that I have to address with most of my athletes on like in that level. I think level 2 of that is address like your recovery better and try to get that as dialed in as you can from like, again, the basics of like your sleep, your eating, hydration, your eating, your hydration. Make sure you're eating like enough protein, obviously. I'm not big in like into like going in like supplements and getting like the macros and whatnot, but there's probably some avenue to try like improve with that. And again, with that, make sure you're also just managing like your overall life stress appropriately, and recognize that there's some time blending into like part 1 of the workload management. Recognize that there's just times where I'm not going to say like have, be fear avoidant because of your whoop score, but there's going to be times in life that like you need to dial things back a little bit based off what you got going on in life. I have an example. I have a college guy that I just assessed last week, and like he was dealing with a lot of injuries in the spring, but like he did not acknowledge it. Like he was just couldn't get in like a good routine as far as like, he was playing the East Coast and they were just traveling a ton. He's was a Division I guy. They were just traveling so much, and he just couldn't get in like a good routine and like get his nutrition dialed in. Like his sleep was being impacted because of that and schoolwork. So he was just like all over the board. And then with that, he's still just trying to push it because he's just trying to compete. But that'd be a good example. It's like, okay, you got to take care of like so I'd argue that this might be like level 1, but you got to take care of that stuff first before you can like say like I got to really make sure like I'm starting to like hammer my workouts as hard as possible. So I'd say like those are level 1, level 2, then level 3. I've talked about this like multiple times. Is like actually like train your arm from like a lifting perspective. Like don't make the rest of you the Ferrari and your arm the Ford Focus. Like give yourself like some actual armor. Like so, I'll use another example of a kid, a college guy. I've seen him a couple times, and then he's dealing with like some forearm stuff, and I was just like, yeah, we're just gonna do some wrist curls. So I was like, okay, go grab go grab a warm up weight, and then he grabs the 10-pounder, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing, man? I was like, he goes, I don't know. I was like, go grab a heavier weight, even though this is a warm up weight. Go grab a heavier weight, and then he got torched. Once we actually pushed him up, like he got, maybe like 25 pounds or something like that. But I just think, we just think that like the arm is just like the muscles and the tissues of the arm is just like this like magical unicorn thing that like the rules of like training don't apply to for some reason, or like they're different. But be strong, be powerful, be able to produce force quickly. And that will probably make you more resilient to like the demands of throwing. But like, I don't say all, but like most athletes don't even like come even remotely close to that with like, their arm care work. So I think that'd be like level 3 of like trying to keep yourself reduced likelihood of being injured.
Preach.
I was gonna say it's interesting because even what you said earlier, it's simple, but it requires the most work. Like the other little modalities are easy to do. You just put it on, put some cuffs on, put a stim pad on, but like the actual intention behind sleeping and eating and stress management and being able to have routines with all these things is the actual hard part.
Yeah, like I had a high school kid in the fall, and he was like, goes, oh yeah, and I get up at 4:00 and go, I go work out at whatever gym that's like 35 minutes away, and it's just like, and he just didn't want to, but he didn't want to go to bed earlier, to do that, because like it was just more important like be hanging out with like his like just going out and partying as a high schooler, which like whatever, but like you have to have like the take from that of like, or you're taking by like cutting off your sleep. You have to have a give somewhere else of like, okay, I need to move, maybe like move my workout some other time, but you just got to manage a schedule appropriately. It was just, but in his eyes, he thought this was like hard work because he's getting up at 4:00 to go and work out. It's like, no, harder work would be like you prioritizing getting to bed earlier or moving your workout to a more like beneficial time for you. So like you can get the most out of it and stay healthier. But like, that just wasn't what he wanted to do. So it's like, okay, well, your arm's going to hurt, man.
That was me. If you don't remember, Terry, I was coming to you and you're like, what else are you doing? And I'm like, I'm doing CrossFit every single day. And on my recovery throwing days, I'm lifting more. Because I was always under the impression that a recovery day from throwing, I just have to like not throw. Like I could do other things.
Yeah.
But as long as I'm not throwing, my arm's going to recover.
You do Murph.
Boy, was I wrong.
Recovery day.
Yeah, literally.
All right, well, we're coming up on the time here, but I would be a little remiss if I didn't bring up this last point. One of my favorite things about your social media, and one of my favorite things about maybe social media in general, is when Friday rolls around and my feed gets blessed with a good old Terry meme. How'd that get started? How did you first get started on that? And then how do you keep pumping out such good content so regularly?
So how it got started, I honestly don't remember. It was when I was at Driveline, and then I just like, it was like early in my account days, which was maybe 2021, maybe 20, yeah, something like that. And then I was just like, okay, I'll just make a meme on whatever it was. I don't remember what the first one was. And then I don't know, I started posting a little bit more. And then I just got to a point where it's just like, I've been making a couple of posts throughout the week, and I'm just going to make something like a little more lighthearted on Friday. And I was like, I'm just going to like keep this up and like post whatever memes and just say Happy Friday. And then I don't know. I just like I've admittedly like dialed back for like just like the creative juices just don't flow as much as they used to. And then just like I don't know, combo that and then just like not having like great templates. You can only have like so many good templates. But yeah, no, just like I don't know. It was always just a way to like mildly gripe about stuff that I was like seeing out there. But again, eventually, I think I've covered all the gripes. So I still try to every do it so often. I think I have a few weeks ago, but I don't know, it's just like find it doesn't even have to be like an actual specific meme template. Just find a picture that's like kind of ridiculous, and then see how you can then add the ridiculous of like what baseball PT/life is. And I definitely poke fun of myself at that. Just add the two together, and that ends up coming across as something pretty entertaining for people, and like it just kind of like growing in like popularity. And I think I have to address it like on every podcast now, which is very funny. But no, it's definitely enjoyable. I'll still like keep on going it, but I probably just not the frequency of when I was at my heyday.
Well, you've inspired me quite a bit. Every now and then you'll
all I
have
can ask for.
a good chain of memes, and I'll be like, man, I really want to create some. So I'll go.
That's what
I don't always post them, but
yeah, as long as like I said, as long as like it then brings people to like also check out like the good content. I was like, I'll just keep doing it, whatever.
Anthony, anything else from you before this final question here?
I just wish I was good at creating memes.
I gave you the blueprint. I didn't just find a ridiculous picture, add a ridiculous statement, and then like poke fun at yourself, and then you're good.
Yeah, I'm gonna use the Coldplay concert one. I'm gonna use that on Friday. We'll see what I can make with it.
Yeah, that time has passed already. You missed your window. You gotta jump on it. That's like if you're using pop culture, you have to jump on it immediately. So like when Scotty Scheffler got arrested, I had it like someone sent me that like his like I think it was that he got arrested that morning, and I luckily it was a Friday. And then, like, luckily someone sent me that, like, immediately. And I was like, oh, man, I got to make this into a meme. And then, like, I think there was a couple during the World Series after, like, Aaron Boone brought in Nestor Cortez to face the top of the Dodgers lineup, which is, like, the most absurd. Like, oh, yeah, guy, you haven't pitched in 3 months? Here, come face Mookie, Shohei, and Freddie Freeman, and good luck. So, like, that was, like, you have to, like, jump on it quick. So, like, the Coldplay one's, like, it's gone and past, man. You got to find the next one and stay on top of it.
Mariners bringing in Robbie Ray in their first playoff appearance.
That'd actually probably be like a good one because it's like retro enough now. You could be like, yeah, and I'm like, oh man, I don't remember that, but yeah. Or you could use like I don't know if you guys saw the game last night. You could watch Dylan Moore like driving in or run just by like getting a ball off the knob of his bat. I was like, oh my god, that's the most Mariners like game time thing that could possibly happen. Is just like Dylan Moore just writhing in pain and Cal like just crosses home plate.
That's great. So our final question here, it's our AAA what's powering you. It's just about what's keeping your training going right now, whether it's new music, some food, a new training program. What's keeping you going right now and really, really driving in your routine?
From a music perspective, so I don't too often listen to music when I'm lifting because I predominantly have just like lifted in my home gym, and I had a long stretch where it's like I would work out before my wife and daughter would wake up. So like I just got in the habit of just like monk style lifting in silence, and my friends thought I was just like a psycho about it. But for anyone older or anyone that likes older rap, the new Clips album is awesome. I mean, Anthony knows I'm a huge Pusha T fan, and Clips is like the original reason why that new album is awesome. So like that'll definitely get anyone hyped up to work out. But also just like, I mean, as a PT, I just know like what the importance of training, what it does from a longevity perspective. And just with like my wife and daughter, I just want to be able to be as like active and productive with them as long as possible. So I think like I don't know. That always just like provides like enough motivation for me. Maybe there's just like some like Uncle Rico type thing where I'm just trying to like continue to live in my heyday of like, oh yeah, I used to be able to like, throw the ball over the mountains or something like that. But usually that's enough. So I know I'm not, humble brag, I guess, but I'm fortunate I can usually keep myself like fairly motivated just off of those things. But yeah, go listen to Clips album. It's awesome.
I'll check it out. Well, Terry, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a fun conversation, and it's been really good to get to know you as well.
Yeah, it's great talking to you guys.
Terry.
Take care, guys.